Story 1. The Mile That Repeats. At 2:11 a.m., my GPS announced in a voice that sounded exactly like mine, "You have returned to the route." I hadn't turned around. I hadn't even changed lanes. And yet the same weathered sign for mile 117 slid past my headlights for the third time. I was cutting across state lines on a night drive I'd done before. Nothing scenic, nothing romantic. Just the kind of practical road trip you take when you want to arrive before sunrise and avoid traffic. The highway had thinned out hours earlier, and now it belonged to truckers, insomnia, and the occasional pair of headlights that appeared in the rearview mirror and vanished again like they'd thought better of it. The rain had stopped, but the world still looked rinsed. Asphalt shone faintly. The dark fields on either side held low fog that hugged the ground like spilled breath. My windshield wipers were off, yet the glass kept catching tiny droplets thrown up from the tires, so the streetlights smeared into pale ribbons whenever I blinked. I remember feeling proud of myself for staying alert. I'd done everything right. Energy drink in the cup holder, playlist on low, the cabin set cool so I wouldn't get drowsy. The car felt like a sealed capsule moving through a sleeping world. That sense of control lasted until I passed the same mile marker again. Mile 117. It wasn't a common number to fixate on. It just happened to be where I'd checked my fuel range and decided I could make the next rest stop without refilling. I'd glanced up, seen the marker, and filed it away without meaning to. 20 minutes later, it appeared again. I assumed I'd misread it. Highway markers blur at night. The mind cheats when it's tired. So I shrugged and kept driving. Then, exactly the same distance later, the marker appeared a third time, lit by my headlights at the same angle, the reflective numbers popping out of the dark like a warning.
I felt my throat tighten, not with panic yet, but with that early, uncomfortable sensation that something has shifted under your feet, and you can't prove it. I looked at my dashboard clock. 2:11 a.m. I looked at my GPS. The route line was steady, confident. Then the device spoke again. "You have returned to the route." I stared at it. "Returned?" I said aloud. "I never left." The speaker crackled a little, like it had picked up interference. Then the voice repeated, more gently, "You have returned to the route." I reached over and turned the volume down, then up, trying to force the device to behave. The voice was not my GPS's default. It had the same neutral cadence, but there was something in the timbre that made my skin prickle. It sounded like someone imitating a machine and getting the imitation almost perfect. And beneath that, beneath the machine-flat tone, was the faintest trace of something else. Familiarity, as if it knew me. I told myself it was my exhaustion projecting. When you drive at night long enough, the mind starts to personalize things. Headlights look like eyes. Road signs feel like messages. Shadows feel like movement. Still, I pulled my phone off the console to check for signal. One bar flickered, then vanished. My playlist stuttered and switched to offline mode. The car's clock, without any prompt, blinked once and reset itself. 2:11 a.m. My stomach dropped. I tapped the clock as if the car could be reasoned with. It didn't change. I tried to laugh, but the sound died in my chest. I wasn't in the kind of rural dead zone where time should freeze. Even if my phone lost service, the car's clock had no reason to reset to the same minute unless something was feeding it that time. I kept driving because stopping on a dark highway at night is how you become a news story. I gripped the steering wheel harder and focused on the road lines, the most reliable thing in my world. 10 minutes later, mile 117 appeared again. My mouth went dry.
"No," I whispered, and I didn't know who I was talking to. The fog along the field seemed thicker now, rising slightly, creeping toward the shoulder. The highway felt narrower, as if the dark pressed in from both sides. I checked my rearview mirror. There were headlights behind me, far back, low and steady. Relief washed through me so fast it made me dizzy. Another driver meant I wasn't alone out here. Another driver meant reality still had witnesses. The headlights stayed behind me for a while, maintaining distance. Then, slowly, they began to close in. The light grew brighter in my mirror, and the silhouette of the vehicle became clearer. An SUV, maybe, with a wide stance. I thought, irrationally, that they were going to pass. I shifted slightly in my lane to give them room. They didn't pass. They matched my speed perfectly. My phone buzzed once, weakly, like it had received a notification. When I looked down, the screen was lit, not with a message, but with the call interface. Incoming call. No caller ID, just a blank line and the vibrating circle. My heart kicked hard. I glanced at the road, then back at the phone. I didn't want to answer. Every story you've ever heard about night roads, about calls from unknown numbers, about strangers and bad decisions rose up in me at once. The call stopped on its own. Immediately, my GPS spoke again, and this time the voice was unmistakable. It was mine. Not an imitation of the GPS voice, not a machine flatness, but my actual speaking voice with my actual tiredness, the way my vowels slur slightly when I'm sleepy. "Don't stop," my voice said. My hands went cold. I didn't answer. I didn't speak. I stared at the road and tried to keep my breathing steady. The voice continued, calm and close, like it was coming from the passenger seat. "Whatever you do," it said, "don't stop on this mile." My skin crawled. I turned my head slightly, just enough to check that the passenger seat was empty. It was. The seatbelt hung neatly. The faint glow from the dashboard lit the fabric, making it look pale and flat. I faced forward again, heart hammering. In the mirror, the SUV headlights flared, then dimmed. The vehicle fell back slightly, then crept forward again, as if the driver couldn't decide. I looked for an exit sign, anything, a rest area, a gas station, a ramp. The highway offered nothing. Only the endless dark and the occasional reflective marker that now felt like a drumbeat. Mile 117. Again. I felt something inside me give way. Not sanity exactly. More like the last thread of denial. I wasn't driving forward. I was moving through a loop, and something or someone wanted me to choose how it ended. The GPS voice, my voice, spoke softly. "You can take the turnout," it suggested. There was no turnout on the map, but as soon as it said the words, I saw it. A narrow break in the guardrail ahead, barely visible, a strip of gravel leading into the dark. It hadn't been there any of the previous times I'd passed this mile, unless I'd simply failed to notice it. But I'd noticed everything. I'd been looking for anything. I glanced in the mirror again. The SUV was closer now, its headlights bright enough to wash the interior of my car in pale light. I couldn't see the driver's face, only the glare, but I sensed intention, pressure, a silent insistence. My voice in the speakers lowered, coaxing. "It's safer off the road," it said. "Let them pass." I swallowed hard. Something about the suggestion felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. It was too reasonable, too considerate, too perfectly shaped to my fear. I refused it, not with a plan, but with stubbornness. I stayed on the highway. I kept both hands on the wheel and drove past the gravel break. The moment I passed it, the SUV headlights behind me cut out. Not dimmed, not turned off gradually. They vanished as if someone had erased them from the world. The darkness behind me felt suddenly bottomless. My stomach rolled. I checked my mirror over and over. Nothing. No car, no taillights, no reflection. My phone buzzed again. Incoming call. No caller ID. I didn't answer. I let it ring. My voice came through the GPS speaker, not annoyed, not angry, just faintly disappointed. "You could have made it easy," it said. The call stopped. My car clock blinked. 2:12 a.m. Time moved. I exhaled shakily as if I'd been underwater. Then the road changed, not dramatically. The lines didn't vanish. The asphalt didn't crumble. It was subtler. The highway began to slope, gently, and the fog on the fields thinned as if a breeze had come through. A distant cluster of lights appeared ahead, small, warm, human. An exit sign materialized out of the dark. Gas, food, 1 mile. I laughed, but it broke into something close to a sob. "Thank God," I whispered. When I pulled off at the exit, the air felt different. The night sounds were louder, crickets, the distant rush of other cars, reality's ordinary noise. The gas station was open, bright, and boring. 2 pumps, a small convenience store, a pickup truck parked near the door. I shut off my engine and sat for a moment, hands still on the wheel, letting my heart settle. My phone buzzed. A voicemail notification. No number attached. My thumb hovered over it, and I felt a cold certainty. If I played it, I would hear my own voice again. I would hear it say something that would stick to me, like a schedule written where it didn't belong. So I didn't play it. I deleted it without listening. I went inside the gas station, paid for fuel, and tried to look normal. The cashier was a young guy with tired eyes. He rang me up without comment. As he handed me my receipt, he said casually, "You coming from the highway?" "Yeah," I said, forcing steadiness. "Been on it a while." He nodded, then leaned forward slightly as if he was about to share a secret he'd shared too many times. "You ever hit that repeating mile?" he asked. My blood went cold. "What?" He shrugged, like it was no big deal. "Some people say it happens when you drive too late," he said, like the road forgets where it is for a minute. I stared at him. "Mile 117? I asked before I could stop myself. The cashier's eyebrows rose. "Yeah," he said. "That one." I walked out with my receipt clenched in my hand, and the night air felt suddenly sharp. Back in my car, I started the engine. The dashboard clock read 2:23 a.m. My GPS screen glowed with the route line, calm and ordinary. For a moment, I almost believed it was over. Then, very softly, the speaker clicked. In my own voice, barely above a whisper, it said, "See you next time." I drove away without looking back. Story 2. The Headlights That Never Pass. I noticed the headlights behind me because they blinked twice, like a driver flashing brights to get my attention. Then they stayed there for 40 miles, perfectly centered in my mirror, never gaining, never falling back, never passing, like they were pinned to me. The road trip was supposed to be simple. I was going to visit my sister, help her move a few things, and be back home by the weekend. I took the night route because I didn't want to waste a daytime drive stuck behind trucks and construction. I'd done it before. The highway was familiar. The towns were familiar. The kind of drive you can do on autopilot while your mind chews on podcasts and half-formed thoughts. The only unfamiliar thing was the weather. A low fog had rolled in from the river valley and settled over the highway in thin sheets. It wasn't dense enough to stop you from driving, but it made the world feel shallow, like you were moving through a corridor of visibility and everything outside that corridor didn't exist. I kept my speed reasonable. I stayed in the right lane. I passed a couple of semis and let others pass me. The usual dance. Around 1:30 a.m., the traffic thinned until it was just me and the dark. That's when I saw the headlights.
They appeared at a distance at first, two pale points hovering in the fog behind me. I thought nothing of it. Another driver, another night traveler, another person who wanted to get where they were going. A few minutes later, the headlights were closer. I checked my speed. I wasn't crawling. If they wanted to pass, they could. The left lane was empty. Instead, they blinked twice. High beams, quick and deliberate. My shoulders tightened. Some drivers do that to signal, move over, but I was already in the right lane. Some do it because they're impatient or because they want to mess with you. I kept my eyes forward and held my lane. The headlight stayed there. 10 minutes, 20, 30. I tried to let the tension go. Maybe they were a nervous driver who didn't want to pass in fog. Maybe they felt safer following my taillights. That's a normal thing, if a little rude. You give space. You don't ride someone. But these headlights weren't riding me, not exactly. They were maintaining a distance that would have been polite if it weren't so unnervingly exact. No matter what I did, slowing slightly, speeding slightly, they remained the same size in my mirror, the same brightness, the same perfect alignment behind my car. It felt like they weren't responding to my speed at all, like they were anchored to me in some other way. I glanced at the clock. 1:47 a.m. I looked away from the mirror and focused on the white line at the edge of the lane. The fog made it look like a ribbon being fed into the dark. My headlights carved a tunnel. The tunnel didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a trap. I turned off my rearview mirror's dimming feature and angled it slightly, trying to catch a glimpse of the driver. The glare was too bright. All I saw was light and the faint outline of a vehicle shape. Tall, maybe an SUV or a truck. Then something else happened that made my skin crawl. The headlights flickered. Not like they hit a bump or a dip. They flickered in a pattern. Two quick dips, then steady again, like someone blinking. Like a signal. My phone, which had been quiet, buzzed with a notification. No service bars. Yet a notification appeared. A calendar reminder. I stared at it, confused. Shift start 1:50 a.m. I didn't have a shift. I didn't work nights. I hadn't set any reminder. My calendar was boring. Appointments, birthdays, the occasional dentist visit. My mouth went dry. The reminder didn't show a location. It didn't show a title beyond those two words. Shift start. I dismissed it with a shaky swipe. At 1:50 a.m., the fog thickened abruptly, as if someone had dropped a veil over the highway. The world narrowed. My headlights caught only a short stretch of road ahead. The shoulders vanished into gray. The stars disappeared. The highway signs became ghostly shapes that surfaced too late and sank away too fast. In my mirror, the headlights behind me became brighter, closer, and still they did not pass. I felt the urge to pull off, to stop at the next exit, get coffee, break the spell. But the next exit sign was a mile away, and the fog made it feel like it was behind glass. Then I noticed something impossible. My rearview mirror reflection didn't match my surroundings. Ahead of me, through my windshield, the highway was empty.
No taillights, no oncoming lights, nothing but fog. Behind me, in my mirror, the headlights were clear and sharp, like they weren't in fog at all, like they existed in a cleaner air pocket that only the mirror could see. My breath turned shallow. I tried not to panic, but my brain was building a pattern whether I wanted it to or not. The road was normal. The mirror was not. The headlights blinked twice again, and this time I heard a sound, not from outside, but from my car speakers, a faint click like an old relay. My radio wasn't on. I hadn't been playing anything, yet the speakers crackled softly. Then a voice came through. My voice. "Pull over," it said. I almost swerved. I hadn't spoken. I hadn't recorded anything. But it was me, the exact texture of my voice when I talk quietly to myself. The voice didn't sound like a GPS. It sounded like someone sitting beside me, leaning close. "Pull over," it repeated, patient. "Let them pass." My hands clenched the wheel. "No," I whispered, and the word felt thin in the fog. The voice in the speakers softened. "You're tired," it said. "You don't want to make a mistake." The exit sign loomed ahead, suddenly close. Rest area, half-mile. My stomach flipped with relief. A rest area meant lights, people, cameras, normal life. In my mirror, the headlights blinked again, slower, like a warning. The voice in my speakers said, "Not there." I swallowed hard. The rest area ramp appeared on the right, curving off into fog. The reflective markers along the ramp looked like eyes lining a path. I signaled and began to move toward the ramp because the need to get away from the highway, away from those headlights, outweighed everything else. The moment my tires crossed onto the ramp, the voice in my speakers laughed, just a short exhale of amusement. In my mirror, the headlights behind me turned with me, perfectly, as if the vehicle had anticipated my move. They followed me onto the ramp. The rest area was supposed to be half a mile down. I drove the curve slowly, expecting to see lights, bathrooms, vending machines, maybe a couple of trucks. Instead, the ramp straightened into a narrow two-lane road lined with trees. No lights, no signs, no reflective arrows. My pulse spiked. I checked the next sign. There was none. The fog here wasn't gray. It was almost white, thick and luminous, swallowing the tree line. My headlights shone into it and came back dull, like the light had been absorbed. Behind me, the headlights were still there, steady and centered. The voice in my speakers whispered, "Good." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I turned the wheel gently, searching for a place to turn around. But the road shoulder was narrow and the trees were close. Then I saw a building ahead, a small structure, maybe a maintenance shed, with one light on above the door. The light was warm, almost inviting. As I approached, I realized it wasn't a shed. It was a toll booth. Not a modern one, not a row of lanes, but a single booth, like something from an older era, sitting in the middle of this road as if the forest had grown around it. There was a window. There was a little metal drawer for coins. There was a sign overhead, faded but readable. "Pay here." My throat tightened. I slowed and rolled down my window a crack. Cold, damp air poured in. The booth window slid open. Inside was darkness. I couldn't see a face, just the suggestion of a person sitting within. A voice drifted out, low and steady. It was my voice. "Ticket, please," it said. I stared, frozen. "I don't have a ticket," I whispered.
The voice in the booth sighed gently, like it had heard that excuse 1,000 times. "Then you need to check in," it said. "You can't be on the road without checking in." Behind me, the headlights flared brighter. The vehicle was close now, close enough that its light washed over my dashboard and made my hands look pale. I didn't want to look in the mirror anymore. I didn't want to see what was behind those lights. I forced myself to speak. "I'm leaving," I said. The booth voice answered, still mine. "You can't leave until they pass," it said. I swallowed hard. My eyes flicked to the coin drawer. There was a small metal plate beside it with engraved text, the kind you see on old equipment. Shift log. My skin prickled. There it was again. The language of schedules and shifts, as if the world was a workplace and the road was a job. In the booth, something moved, and the window glass caught just enough light to show a hint of a face. It looked like mine, but wrong, like a reflection in water.
The booth voice said almost kindly, "If you acknowledge them, they'll go." I shook my head. "No." The voice in the booth lowered. "Then you'll keep driving," it said, "and they'll keep following." My mouth went dry. I thought about slamming the car into reverse, about turning around, about doing anything but staying here. But behind me, the headlights were so close now that reversing felt like backing into a wall. I did the only thing I could do without moving the car. I turned off my headlights. Darkness fell like a curtain. For a heartbeat, I saw nothing but the glow of my dashboard and the faint outline of the toll booth light. Behind me, the following headlights became the only light on the road. They blazed in my mirror, harsh and white. And in that mirror, I finally saw what I hadn't allowed myself to see. There was no vehicle, no grille, no hood, no windshield. Just headlights, suspended in fog, perfectly spaced, perfectly level, like eyes that had learned the shape of a car to make me accept them. My breath caught in my throat. A sound rose in me, half gasp, half cry. In the booth, my voice whispered, "Now you see." The suspended lights blinked once, slowly, like a wink. Something in me snapped, not sanity, but compliance. I refused to let the road teach me its rules. I turned my headlights back on, slammed the car into drive, and floored it past the booth. The booth light flashed, strobing. The voice in my speakers screamed my name in my own voice, sharp and furious. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I drove into the fog like I was trying to outrun a thought. For a long minute, the world stayed white and narrow. Then abruptly, the fog thinned. The trees fell back. Reflective highway signs appeared, normal and blessedly boring. I burst out onto the actual rest area ramp, the real one, with vending machines and bright lights and a row of parked trucks. I pulled into a spot, shaking so hard I could barely put the car in park. In my mirror, the highway behind me was empty. No headlights, no eyes. I sat there, breathing until my chest stopped hurting. Then my phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Shift end, 1:50 a.m. I stared at it, nauseated. The time on my dashboard read 2:06. I deleted the notification without opening it. I didn't want to see what details it contained. As I got out of the car, the cold night air hit my face, and I tried to convince myself the booth had been a hallucination. Inside the rest area bathroom, I washed my hands. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Everything looked normal. Then I glanced at my reflection in the mirror above the sink, and for half a second, just half a second, my reflection smiled before I did. Story 3. The detour sign with my name.
The detour sign appeared out of nowhere, fluorescent orange in my headlights, and it didn't say road closed or follow detour. It said my full name, and underneath, in smaller letters, it said, "This way home." It was the kind of road trip that makes you feel mature and capable until something goes wrong. I was returning from a friend's wedding, a 3-day blur of speeches and hotel coffee and too little sleep, and I decided to drive back at night so I could be in my own bed by morning. The route home was straightforward. 2 highways, 1 state line, a final stretch of rural road that cut through farmland. I'd driven it enough to recognize the landmarks. A certain billboard, a certain bridge, a certain gas station that always smelled like fried food. At 12:40 a.m., my GPS rerouted me for the first time. Accident ahead, saving 12 minutes. That seemed plausible. I accepted it without thinking. The highway exit came up and I took it, following the new route onto a 2-lane road that ran through darkness. The road was wet. The trees on either side were tall and close, and their branches met overhead in places, making the road feel like a tunnel. My phone signal dropped to 1 bar, then none.
The GPS kept going anyway, confident in its blue line. I should have turned around the moment I lost service, but my tired brain clung to the idea that maps work offline, that I was still moving toward home, that this was merely a short detour through emptiness. A few miles in, I saw the first sign, a reflective orange rectangle posted on a temporary metal stand, like a construction warning. I expected it to say, "Detour" or "Road work ahead." It didn't. It said my full name, first and last, spelled correctly in bold black capital letters. For a second, my vision blurred, as if my eyes refused to accept it. I slowed, foot hovering over the brake, and my headlights washed over the sign. The letters stayed, solid, real. Beneath my name, in smaller text, it read, "This way home." My mouth went dry. I glanced around instinctively, searching for a prank, a person, a camera. There was nothing, just trees and darkness and the wet road stretching forward. I laughed once, sharply, because it felt like the only human response. "Very funny," I said aloud, though I didn't know who I was addressing. My GPS speaker clicked, and a voice came through. Not the usual GPS voice, my voice. "Take the next right," it said softly. My skin prickled. I tightened my grip on the wheel and kept driving straight. The road bent left, then right, then left again. The trees remained close. The darkness felt deliberate, curated. Then the next sign appeared. Again, fluorescent orange. Again, my name. Again, "This way home." Only now there was an arrow painted beneath it, pointing right, toward a narrow side road I almost missed. The side road looked wrong. Not dangerous, not obviously impassable. Wrong in a quieter way. The asphalt was older. The reflective paint on the edge lines was faded. The entrance was framed by 2 dead-looking trees whose branches reached toward each other like a gate. I didn't turn. I drove past. The GPS voice, my voice, sighed faintly. "You'll just make it longer," it said. My heart hammered. I forced myself to speak. "Stop," I told the GPS. "Stop talking." The speaker crackled with static. Then, in my voice, very calmly, it said, "I'm not the one talking. I'm just the one you listen to." The road dipped, and suddenly the trees opened onto a stretch of empty field. Fog lay over the grass like a thin blanket. In the middle distance, I saw a single house, a farmhouse, old and dark, with one porch light glowing weakly. Relief flickered in me. A house meant people, A door, a phone. It meant the world I knew. As I approached, I realized the house wasn't on a driveway. It sat unnaturally close to the road, like someone had dropped it there. The porch light made the front steps gleam wetly. And on the porch, nailed to the post, was another orange sign. My name. This way, home. My stomach clenched. I didn't slow this time. I drove past the house at the posted speed, refusing to look at the windows. As I passed, the porch light flickered, and for the briefest moment I saw movement behind the front door glass. A shape close to the pane, as if someone stood there waiting for me. My phone buzzed, startling me. The screen lit with a notification. New voicemail. No missed call, no number, just the voicemail icon, insistent. I didn't open it. I couldn't shake the certainty that if I listened, it would be my own voice again telling me to turn, telling me to come home to whatever definition the road had invented. The GPS voice spoke again, quiet and coaxing. You're tired, it said. You deserve to rest. The road narrowed. The fog thickened. My headlights caught a reflective sign ahead, not orange this time. White. A normal-looking road sign. And that normality made my blood run colder than any paranormal message, because it suggested the road was learning how to blend in. The sign read, Welcome home. I slowed despite myself. My breath turned shallow. I didn't recognize this place.
The sign was posted at the edge of a small town that hadn't existed on my route. A few streetlights glowed weakly in the distance, their light smeared by fog. The town looked empty. No cars, no people, just quiet buildings and wet pavement. I turned my brights on. At the edge of the first street, another sign stood, smaller, as if meant for pedestrians. It had a list of names, like a directory. I drove closer, squinting, and my chest tightened as I read the top entry. My full name. Under it, in neat lettering, was an address. And beneath that, one more line. Night shift. The same language again. Shifts, logs, check-ins. Like places that wanted to assign you a role. My hands shook. I looked down at my dashboard clock. 12:40 a.m. It had reset, the exact time the reroute happened. I stared until my eyes watered, my throat filled with a sour taste. I blinked hard and checked again. 12:40. The time wasn't moving. I realized with a cold clarity that I hadn't entered a town. I'd entered a loop with a name. The GPS voice, my voice, was almost tender now. Just one turn, it whispered. Then you can sleep. The street ahead was lined with houses that looked like copies of each other. Their porches were dark, but each had a faint warm glow leaking from beneath a front door, a thin strip of light like an invitation. I thought of the hotel fourth-floor door leaking warm light. I thought of the warehouse office door, warm light as bait. I didn't trust it. I reached down and did something impulsive and desperate. I turned off my GPS. Not muted it, not dimmed it, powered it off completely. The screen went black. For a second, silence. Then my car speakers clicked and my voice spoke anyway, closer than before, like it was inside the dashboard. You can't turn me off, it said softly. I'm already in the route. My hands went numb. I fumbled for my phone, opened the map app. It spun, trying to load. No service. No offline map. Nothing. I was alone
with a road that knew my name.
I took a slow breath and made a decision based on the only thing I could still trust. Momentum toward the familiar. Not toward home as the signs defined it, but toward the direction I knew. I turned the car around. Not neatly, not safely. I swung a wide arc in the empty street, tires hissing on wet pavement, heart hammering like I was committing a crime. As soon as I faced the way I'd come, the town's streetlights flickered. Every porch light in every house along the street turned on at once, a synchronized flare of warm yellow, like eyes opening. The GPS voice in my speakers sharpened. "Wrong way," it said. I drove anyway. As I sped toward the edge of town, the "Welcome Home" sign was gone. The directory sign was gone. The fog thickened, and the street behind me, visible in my rearview mirror, seemed to lengthen unnaturally, as if the town was stretching to keep me inside it. My phone buzzed again. New voicemail. I didn't listen. I kept driving. Ahead, the road looked different, more familiar. Trees again. The 2-lane stretch I remembered. Hope flared in me, fragile and bright. Then an orange sign stepped into my headlights, placed dead center in the lane. My name. This way home. I swerved around it, breath ragged. Another sign. Another. They appeared faster now, like the road was throwing them at me in frustration. The speaker voice, mine, grew colder. "You're making it difficult," it said. I gritted my teeth and stared at the white edge line, using it like a rope. Then I saw a pair of headlights ahead. Oncoming traffic. Real traffic. I almost cried with relief. Another driver meant witnesses. It meant the shared world. I flashed my brights once, not to warn, but to prove I could interact with something real. The oncoming car passed, and for a moment the fog thinned in its wake, and the road looked normal, just wet asphalt and trees. My dashboard clock jumped. 12:41 a.m. Time moved. I exhaled a shaky breath, and in that instant, the orange signs stopped appearing. 5 minutes later, I reached the highway again. The familiar green sign for the interstate loomed up, reflective and blessedly ordinary. I merged, shaking, and the world settled into its usual dark. My phone regained a bar of service. Then, too, a voicemail notification remained on my screen. I didn't listen. I drove the rest of the way home with the radio on loud, singing along badly just to fill the car with a voice that belonged to me. In my driveway, I finally allowed myself to look at the missed call log. There were no missed calls. There were no numbers. Only a single entry under voicemail, with no timestamp, no sender. The title line read, "Home." I went inside and locked the door behind me, but sleep didn't come. Because sometime in the deepest part of the night, when the house was silent and my phone was face down on the nightstand, I heard a faint click from its speaker, and my own voice, barely a whisper, said, "Next time, take the right."